Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Wednesday, March the 19th. Lovely to have you a part of the broadcast. As always, we are going to do a little bit of a hypothetical here where you get to imagine your world as a Titans fan with a little bit of peace, with a little bit of tranquility, with a little less Will Levis, because there were a couple of different news items-ish out there in the world yesterday and into this morning, indicating that the Titans would have some level of interest or are receiving some level of interest in trading Will Levis, the former second-round pick, because, of course, they are heading in a direction away from Will Levis. So we are going to dive into that together. We'll talk about what would be a hypothetical trade that you would be comfortable doing, and we will also talk about where he's most likely to end up next season. We'll get the little rising and falling at the end of the show. We appreciate when you guys participate. We always appreciate when you share the program around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Wherever you are hanging out, please share the broadcast, text the link to a friend, retweet it, or share now to public. Hit the like button, hit that thumbs up button. If you're just now trickling in on YouTube, it always helps us grow this show. And once you've done that, as more of you guys trickle on in here, we'll go ahead and get it started. Matt Lawler says, God, why would you want Will, though? He's clearly a future cut. Well, not if you're paying attention to recent quarterback rehabilitation history, because there's a great many quarterbacks who are less talented than Will Levis that have found ways to rebound in their second, third, sometimes fourth stop in their NFL careers. And potentially, Will Levis could be the next of those players. And certainly that's his hope. And that is the hope of the people who are around Will Levis, his team, for lack of a better term, his representation. So we will get into those things and we will dive in together. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. Hello, lovely to have you back. And I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by the wonderful people at the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress. Get the intel edge you need to succeed with the Ashton team. By Bart Durham Injury Law, because you deserve to be paid if you've been in an automobile accident or have suffered a personal injury. BartDurham.com for more info. Zen Sports, where you can wager on all your favorite major sports, including the tournament, which gets underway tomorrow. ZenSports.com for more information. Promo code ATOZTN. And TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch, where your first workout is free. As a Middle Tennessee resident, no workout ever recycled or repeated. Just the best in the business at TrueMathFitness.com. So today and last night, there was a couple of different news items, not outright reports, but news items relevant to Will Levis that make this a conversation worth having. Because if I present it to Titans fans, imagine, it's like the calm app speaking to you in soothing tones. Imagine a world where Will Levis wasn't on your roster anymore. Is that something that I could interest you in? And many of you would say, yes, of course. Get him out of here. We didn't want him in the first place. We're Vols fans. We hated him. He played at Kentucky. He was terrible there. He was terrible with the Titans. Who could not have seen this disaster coming? Well, everybody except your football team, because they spent $228 million around him last year, and it cratered. He cratered, and they cratered, due in large part, not totally, but in large part, due to Will Levis not being able to get it right. Now, the question becomes, okay, you signed Brandon Allen. He's clearly a backup quarterback. You did not address the quarterback situation in Tennessee in any other meaningful way other than Brandon Allen. All right, that means Cam Ward. So, Cam Ward, Brandon Allen, and Will Levis? No, not likely. They are going to try and find a place for him to land, and teams will do their due diligence and call about Will Levis to see what the Titans might be willing to take to get a former second-round pick off their books and out of their locker room and out of their lives, out of Brian Callahan's hair, for lack of a better term. And it's not like they hate the person. The person is a good person. The person is a hard worker. Will Levis, I thought, gave excellent effort, but you can kind of stop with excellent effort, right? And that matters. You'd rather have a player that's willing and has that fight and has that toughness and all those different type of things. That's not something that can be taught, but ultimately the player just wasn't good enough, and not nearly good enough, not even remotely good enough. And he is now 5-12, I think, in the NFL as a starting quarterback. And QB win losses aren't the best metric of judging a quarterback, but if you've watched the Will Levis experience, you understand that for every one of those losses that he was a part of, he is a huge part of the reason that they typically lose, or at least he has been in the last year. So with everything that we've got going on right now, the question becomes this: on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, in the comments section, what is fair compensation for Will Levis in a trade? What would you consider to be fair compensation? And you can be unserious if you want. I'm sure many of you will say a ham sandwich or, a used jock strap or something like that because you're cruel and mean. But in all seriousness, you got a 7th-round pick for Malik Willis. What would you be comfortable trading Will Levis for? Because there's no sense in just, stewing over it and biding your time until he's off your roster. You need to try and recoup as much value out of this player as he's still capable of offering you. So that's your Two Rivers Ford take. As always, it's presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. It's truck month at Two Rivers Ford, and they have excellent offers. In fact, I have a new offer that Two Rivers Ford just sent me earlier today that I can tell you all about. If I was prepared for this, as I typically am, I would tell you that it is officially truck month at Two Rivers Ford, and hot off the presses. See, this is off the presses. It's maybe not hot at this point in time, but Two Rivers Ford has just announced 2.9% financing for 72 months on all remaining 2024 F-150s. That's 2.9% APR for 72 months when you finance through Ford Credit. They have over 200 F-150s in stock at the dealership in Mount Juliet. And when it comes to the price, Two Rivers sells at invoice. It's just that simple, and it's always a great deal. So go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com for more information. So what is fair compensation for Will Levis if the Titans are to trade him? Because here's what sparked the discussion, other than the obvious, which is that they are moving in a direction that is away from Will Levis. Josina Anderson, who is, I believe, an independent contractor at this point in time. I don't think she's affiliated with a network. But Josina tweeted, and she's obviously, had scoops and insights and information for quite some time. I was just told that these two quarterbacks' names came up in a recent preliminary trade inquiry or internal discussions per a league source: Kirk Cousins and Will Levis. The Titans would like to transition. That is the quote that she posted on Twitter, which is, of course, what we all know. Now, what does that mean? That does not mean that the Titans are actively shopping Will Levis, but it does leave open the door that they are hearing calls or taking calls, receiving calls on Will Levis, which is something that Terry McCormick added to earlier. Terry said that if the team is not currently or actively shopping Will, but he adds, if the team did look to trade Levis, it would make sense for that deal to happen closer to the draft or even during it. I would offer you that it would make no sense for that deal to happen anywhere close to before the draft or even during the draft, because the thing that would make the most sense is you let the chips fall where they may as far as the quarterback carousel goes, and you say, all right, we have a quarterback. Who needs one? The Giants? Did you get left without a good option or a good enough option that you can't turn your nose up at trading a 6th-round pick for Will Levis? Okay, come on down. We'll give you an offer. Who else has a quarterback situation? The Rams with Matt Stafford be in need of a backup. Not necessarily because Jimmy Garoppolo is, of course, there. But there are different scenarios that you could look at, explore, and say after the draft, after teams have largely settled on their quarterback situation, all right, I've got one left. Who wants it? He may be off the bargain bin, but I've got one, and you can get some level of compensation for him. Cody Russell on Facebook Live says, best case, in my opinion, is we can get a 4th or a 5th from him, and we could package those to move back into the 3rd round if they don't trade down from 35. You're not getting a third, or you're not getting a fourth round pick for Will. I would be stunned if you got a fifth round pick for Will. Here's the problem with the Will Levis thing. You know that awful, awful season that resulted in you being the worst team in football that you lived through and are probably scarred by, and now sees Will Levis on the way out the door? You made it. You lasted through that whole season. You saw everything that went down, and you are at a place, most of you, I would imagine the vast majority of you, where you're like, yeah, I'm good on that experience. I don't want to see that again. And if they dare even think about starting him again, well, then I'll riot. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The rest of the league saw that too. So everything, and maybe they didn't feel it as viscerally as you did, because God knows nobody excels at the just chest punch turnover. Like you got hit right in the sternum at the point where he chooses to make these soul-stealing turnovers. Maybe most of the NFL during the season, and they did, checked out on the Titans, and they were irrelevant. They were irrelevant after October. There was no reason to pay attention to the Titans other than, all right, what meme did Will Levis make this week? But for anybody doing due diligence and in pro personnel scouting departments, whose job it is responsible to keep tabs on other players around the league, on other teams' rosters, they will have seen what it is that Will Levis did last year. And they will know that that is an advantage for them if they are trying to acquire the services of Will Levis on the cheap. There is no scenario in which you get a fourth round pick for Will Levis. I would be stunned. I would be shocked. I would be absolutely flabbergasted. Okay, let me not say no, because I suppose there's always a scenario, but that one scenario is one, and there's a million different other scenarios where you settle for a seventh. It sucks. And I'll tell you why it sucks even worse than you want better than that here in just a second, right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress. Get the intel edge you need to succeed at GaryAshton.com, the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators. It doubly sucks, not just because Will Levis was bad last year, but because of what you sunk into Will Levis. They not only spent a second-round pick on him, 33 overall, but they traded their third-round pick. So not only did you sink a second-round pick, but you sunk a third-round pick in that following season's draft. Now, that's now 2 years, 23 and 24, where you have operated without a third-round pick. 23 because of Levis, 24 because of Snead, and that is an unfortunate, or excuse me, 24, you didn't have a third-round pick because of Levis. 25, you do not have a third-round pick because of Snead. And so the results of that are still something that you're dealing with, and something that you probably wish in retrospect that you hadn't done as an organization. But that's what it is. That's a sunk cost. Now what can you get back for him? I would be surprised if they got anything better than a fifth. Would be a huge win. A huge, huge win for me. Nate Samuel says, we expect him to go. Watch him be our starter next year. I'm going to sneeze. No, they're I think Brian Callahan, and he would never say this publicly, but I think Brian Callahan would rather you stab him in the chest than start another game with Will Levis, unless there was absolute necessity. Mike Vrabel's burner says on YouTube, Levis will have more of a career as a starter than Callahan as a head coach. That might be true. Callahan couldn't even scheme up targets for Ridley when the season was pointless. That's not true. They did get better with Ridley down the stretch. I think that was pretty evident. That's really about the only, you guys know that I was very critical of Brian Callahan and the coaching staff last year. You know that I said that I would prefer that they clean house, because I thought you could get anybody to go 3-14. I know that has led to some difference in opinions between me and the Titans head coach, and that's fine. Brian was still good enough, even though he vehemently disagrees with the fact that I called for his job. He still did the interview with us at the Combine and is always very cordial when I deal with him, but he understands that, he screwed up last year too. Will was the biggest problem. Will, occupies, I would say, if you're doing by percentages, I would put half of the blame on Will Levis, which is a huge amount of blame for one player to shoulder. But I would also put 25% on the coaching staff and an additional 25% on the front office, who ultimately ended up Well, the general manager got fired. The rest of the front office, well, the assistant GM also got fired, and Anthony Robinson. But you understand my point. Like, Will Levis was the biggest reason that they screwed up last year, but Brian Callahan wasn't good enough at his job. Rand Carthon wasn't good enough at his job. Chad Brinker wasn't good enough at his job. The only one who got fired for that was, I mean, theoretically, Will Levis got fired from his starting job, and Rand Carthon also did. Those were the two people most held accountable for the 3-14 last year. Now, I have no idea what Brian Callahan's going to be as a head coach. He may be fine this season. He may get things right, and he may rebound spectacularly. He may learn from some of his mistakes that he made last year and be a significantly better football coach for it. That's possible. And it's also possible that he doesn't. And it's possible that he gets fired at the end of the year or halfway through the year or whenever the Patriots come to town. And if Mike Vrabel and the Patriots beat the Tennessee Titans in Nashville at home with Harold Landry and whomever else. I saw they signed Jack Gibbons today. And all these different things. Like, I don't know. Callahan comes into the 2025 season as a pretty comfortable bet for first coach fired. Brian Daboll has to be up there too, if you're taking odds on such things. But there's nothing to say that he can't rebound, right? I mean, players come back from failure all the time. Coaches are capable of doing that too. I have no idea what the future holds for Brian Callahan. I just know that in his first year, it was awful. It was awful. I would have been okay with them moving on from Brian Callahan. At the end of that, even as I acknowledge that Will Levis was the biggest percentage of the problem, there was not a group on that roster of players that got appreciably better at any point as a direct result of coaching. And I think that's, I could say that pretty comfortably at this point in time. Curtis says Levis made the same mistakes repeatedly. It's fair, Buck, talking about all the different situations for Levis and for Callahan. Juan says, I feel like Callahan should stay, though. Based on what? I mean, listen, Juan, you're allowed to feel that way. But not just because you're tired of change. Like, if he's not good enough at the job, again, you could get everybody. You could get basically the rest of the league that's not named Hugh Jackson, who went winless one year with the Cleveland Browns to go 3-14. You could get anybody to be the worst team in football. I steadfastly believe that. Many of you probably don't remember this, and I can't remember if I did this on radio or if I did this on primetime or if I did this on both. But, I remember talking to you guys about, it's really hard to do as much losing as you did. It's really, really difficult. I understand it's hard on the players, it's hard on the fans, it's hard on the coaches, it's hard on the, administrators, hard on the business staff, whatever. But it's a hell of a lot harder to win football games. It's easier to lose them. You can lose football games in so many different ways. It's a lot harder to win them. And last year was, I wouldn't say that they ever outright gave up, but it was just at a certain point where they didn't have shit and they weren't able to stop the bleeding. And if anything, things got appreciably worse at certain points. Jimmy Darling says, on Facebook Live, can't see how you blame Levis for everything. I didn't. I blamed him for half. You weren't paying attention. He says, when you had a bad offensive line, no wide receiver play, no offensive scheme from the staff, nothing made sense on offense but Tony Pollard, Tom Brady would look bad on this offense. That may be true, but also he was awful. He was god-awful. He had the most individual turnovers, or he was tied for the most individual turnovers anywhere in the sport. He also made some of the worst decisions you've ever seen a player made in some of the worst moments that you would ever see a player make those decisions, which I'm pretty comfortable Tom Brady would not. I looked at, for example, the Bears game, the first game of the season, where he made that awful pick six that directly lost them the game, where he physically handed the ball and the win to the other team. And I remember saying after that Bears game, okay, that's awful. That's probably going to be the worst play of his career. And then he did the same shit the very next week. And that is when Brian Callahan did the what the F are you doing and all these different things. So you're wrong on a variety of fronts. I did not blame Levis for everything. I blamed him for 50% of it, which I think is a fair share. I am very cognizant of the bad offensive line. He made it worse. I am very cognizant of the wide receiver help. He made it worse. I am very cognizant of the offensive coaching staff's failures. He made it worse. So if you are going to ignore all of those things, then live in this blissful ignorance that would allow you to say, well, no, he's really not that bad. No, he was that. He was awful, awful, awful. I've never seen quarterback play that. It's not even that it was that bad, like that bad, because there were moments when it was fine or league average or whatever. But like, I've never seen quarterback play that catastrophic. Like the ability to have the most chaotic result in the worst possible situations. I've never seen anything like that in my life. Never in my life. So I maybe you're just a perpetual optimist, maybe you're a Will Levis fan, maybe you went to Kentucky, I don't know, but like ignoring all those different things. Ignoring all those different things is I mean it's just not realistic. It's not grounded in reality. And if you're somebody who feels that way, then I can't really help you. All right. So, as you look at the rest of this, where would you expect if Will Levis was to be traded? Where might you think or where would you think he might land in 2025? Which team do you think might be most interested in trading for the services of Will Levis, who is heading into year 3 of his rookie deal as a 2023 second round pick? We can talk about these things together on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. In the comment section, if you would like to get involved there, where would you expect that Will Levis might land? Let me know. We'll discuss at length together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Bart Durham Injury Law. You deserve to be paid. And Bart Durham is there to help you, whether it's personal injury or an automobile accident, big truck, a regular vehicle incident. They are there to help you, as they have helped so many people over the course of the last 75 years plus in Tennessee and in Kentucky, getting the results that you and they deserve. You can see their case results online. You can also stop by their website and get a free consultation, bartdurham.com, for more information. You deserve to be paid. All right. So as we look at this, where do you think Will Levis might likely land up if he is traded from the Titans roster? Ocho says Levis going to Pittsburgh. That's a fascinating one because right now I'm laughing because, of course, Mason Rudolph is in Pittsburgh. You offered him to return, and he declined and decided that he would prefer to go to Pittsburgh. If the Steelers don't land Aaron Rodgers, Mason Rudolph would be their starting quarterback. I can't imagine Mason Rudolph awakening to the news that, one, the Steelers would not be signing Aaron Rodgers, but two, that Will Levis would somehow end up with him in Pittsburgh. That I don't, and certainly he doesn't dislike Will by any stretch of the imagination, or at least that's not something that I know. I don't think that there's any animosity. I think they got along fine between the two of them. It's a tough situation they were both in, but that would be crazy if Levis landed in Pittsburgh. Patrick Ellis says the Rams. I don't think so. Jimmy Garoppolo is there as a backup. Matt Stafford is obviously there as a starter. Kerry B says the Jags. Who's the Jags' current backup quarterback? Let's look at their Arrow lads really quickly and see if we cannot make that determination, because obviously Trevor Lawrence is there. Liam Cohen is also there. Their backup quarterback right now is Nick Mullins, who I believe was signed as an unrestricted free agent from Minnesota. I don't know what kind of money Nick Mullins got. Let's see if they have any details here on his contract situation. Does not appear that Our Lads is going to give me his contract situation, but Liam Cohen went out and found a backup quarterback in free agency, which would probably take Levis off the table. I've had to think about this for a while, and I really had a hard time figuring out what spot made the most sense, because a lot of teams do have their quarterback situation lined up. There's very few of them that don't. One that made sense to me is Las Vegas, because Geno Smith is on an expiring contract and 35 years old. Another that made sense to me was in New York, obviously, because they are in the Aaron Rodgers waiting game, I guess you could call it. Doesn't sound like Rodgers is particularly keen on playing for them. But right now, the only quarterback that they have under contract is Tommy DeVito. Russell Wilson is also floating around out there. And that would be a curious situation to see where Russell Wilson landed too. But I'm looking at this and seeing not too many. I mean, Cleveland is in need of quarterback play. I don't know. I think Browns fans would riot if you went from Deshaun Watson to Will Levis, but they're in a situation of their own making, and it's not an easy one. So Cleveland, the Giants, Pittsburgh, and maybe Las Vegas are really the only spots that I could come up with that made a lot of sense for Will Levis. And we'll see what happens. There could always be a wild card in the mix there. Again, a lot of you guys saying Rams. Rams have Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo is an appreciably better backup quarterback than Will Levis is at this point in his career. William Spurgeon says Patriots because I would want Joe Milton in a trade. Why would you want Joe Milton for what? To do backflips on the sideline as he plays third string quarterback for you? No, that's not something that I could envision in your future. Juan says I can see him in San Fran. No, you couldn't because Brock Purdy is there and so is Mac Jones on a 2-year deal. I don't think that there's who's Arizona's backup. That's Jacoby Brissett, the backup quarterback for all backup quarterbacks at this point in time. So a lot of teams do have these. A lot of these teams do have their situation in place. And B says Jimmy Garoppolo is not the future. It doesn't matter. He doesn't have to be the future. He just has to be the present. You're going to try and convince me that Will Levis is somebody's future? No, that's nonsense. You're just looking for somebody you can rely upon if Matt Stafford goes down because he's 37 and he doesn't move well at this point in time. So we will see what becomes of Will Levis and how that situation plays out. People are asking about the Bills' backup quarterback situation. I will double check for you because I don't know that off the top of my head. The Bills' backup quarterback right now is Mitch Trubisky, who has been there for a little while and seems pretty comfortably entrenched in that situation. Now, could you trade for Will Levis and try and upgrade the position potentially? Yeah, but Trubisky has started way more games, been a way more successful and effective player than Will Levis has, and I would be shocked if that is something that they chose to go with instead of Mitch Trubisky. So, I think there's a couple of teams that make sense, but it's not a long list of teams, and that's kind of the thing that you're working against. So we'll see what ultimately the Titans end up being able to do with Will Levis. I would be shocked if it just doesn't make sense to outright release him. That is the least likely of those scenarios. Somebody will give up a 7th-round pick for Will Levis, but that's kind of the situation you're in, right? A 7th-round pick. It's best case scenario, a 5th. Best case scenario, a 5th-round pick. All right, let's do a little rising and falling. Whose stock rose? Whose stock fell this week in sports? Let's talk about it together in the comment section right after I remind you that Zen Sports makes the primetime program possible. ZenSports.com is where you go for the best wagering out there to get in on all the action on all your favorite major sports. I'm watching the Pistons and the Heat right now. The Heat lead 60-58 at the half. You can bet college hoops, which gets started in earnest tomorrow. You can bet the NHL. Of course, you've got baseball soon upon us. Zen Sports, promo code ATOZTN gets you in on all the action. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789 for more information. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet at Zen Sports. Whose stock rose? Whose stock fell this week in sports? I think there's a couple of different places that you could look. I meant to play this clip for you earlier. It's Will Levis talking with Jimmy Wyatt at the Super Bowl about this because, I think Will Levis is probably in a stock down type of situation right now, and his stock was already down, but it's just going to be tough to find a landing spot that nets you fair return on that 2nd-round pick and that 3rd-round pick that you ultimately gave up to draft him.
Taking the good with the bad and making sure that I'm taking note of all the things that happened and most importantly trying to clean up the things that could have made the season go a little smoother if I were able to clean up beforehand. So a lot of good, a lot of things that I think I was able to improve on from last year and a lot of stuff that I know is up to the level of what needs to happen as an NFL quarterback, and a lot of throws too that a lot of NFL quarterbacks weren't able to make, and I think that those plays give me the confidence to go and improve on the things that I need to propel me further in this league. So I'm looking forward to actually meeting him in person when I get back in the building next week, and then yeah, it was cool just hitting them back and forth. The first thing I noticed was the 617 area code, so that's close to my heart. So had a little talk there, but yeah, seems like a great dude. Obviously, he's done some amazing things with the Chiefs, and looking forward to getting to know him and seeing what he's got planned and what he sees for the vision of this team. It doesn't change the process. I feel like I think I have a really good schedule and outlook on this next couple months before we start up OTAs, and I'm going to put myself in a great position to be healthy and be ready to play, and hopefully I can do whatever I can to show them that I can and should still be the quarterback for this team here. And I feel like it's in their best interest, and they got to do their due diligence to make sure that they know who's out there and evaluate who they feel like they should evaluate. So it doesn't offend me at all, and I know going 3-14 doesn't get you your job security any year and for any team. So I know how it goes, and all I can do is put my head down and work to again show them that I can still be this team's quarterback.
They're probably not going to give him the opportunity to. Maybe he gets through training camp and gives as much effort. And Will Levis, there's nobody that would question his effort. It's just the skill that you would obviously question. But I don't think they seem terribly intent on giving him an opportunity to really compete. Right? They're trying to ship him out of here. So I would say stock down on Will Levis at this point in time. And I would also say stock down on my new basketball coach, the Indiana Hoosiers' new basketball coach, because apparently in his press conference today, he admitted that he was tampered with during the regular season of the college basketball year.
Yeah, and obviously the process, is the process on how it plays out. And, as you're going through their season, they were, very respectful of making sure that my focus continued to be on our team, and certainly appreciated that.
Yeah, okay. Being respectful of your team and the team's process while you currently recruit the coach from West Virginia during his season to come be the next Indiana basketball coach. So stock down on my new guy, because he's not media savvy enough to recognize that you are not supposed to say that you were tampered with during the regular season. And now there will probably be some level of fine that's incurred. Terrible job by all. Off to a hot start in Bloomington. I would expect nothing less. That's going to do it for us tonight. Speaking of expecting nothing less, you expect nothing less than the best when you go to TrueMavFitness.com. Your first workout is free. As a Middle Tennessee resident, no workout ever recycled or repeated at TrueMav Fitness. Radio show schedule going to be different tomorrow. Me, Bert, and Lucas are only on for an hour tomorrow and on Friday because the radio station is carrying the NCAA tournament, which is great because we'll show up for an hour and then we'll go get drunk somewhere. And I'm very excited about that. So I hope that you have a great evening. I'll look forward to talking to you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and only at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone. We'll see you there.